Glad you could join us tonight. Please turn to Psalm number 74 as we continue our study in the book of Psalms this evening. The Psalms that we are studying at this point were not written by David, but written by Asaph, and we are looking specifically at Psalm 74 and 75 this evening. I apologize for the confusion about the assignment sheets. But just a quick review, what was Psalm 73 about last time we studied? What was Psalm 73 about? Someone remember what the psalm was about? Susie.
That the author was saying that he had almost stumbled because of his misunderstanding and actually envy of the wicked, of their prosperity, even though they were wicked, and his seemingly lack of prosperity, although he was more spiritually prosperous until he entered God's sanctuary.
Okay, so he was envious when he saw how well off wicked people were doing, that they didn't seem to have problems, and yet they prospered, and he wondered why God would allow that, and then he realized that he needed to look at the end result, not just of the present time or the present life, but where it was headed, the problems and punishment that God would bring upon the wicked, whereas if he served God, he would draw near to God and have the blessings of God. Other comments or discussion anybody has on Psalm 73 from last time? Okay, let's look at Psalm 74 then this evening. First of all, let's go ahead and read it. Who'd like to read Psalm 74 for us, please? Joe, Psalm 74, please.
Oh God, why have you cast us off forever? Why does your anger smoke against the sheep of your pasture? Remember your congregation which you have purchased of old, the tribe of your inheritance which you have redeemed. This Mount Zion where you have dwelt, lift up your feet to the perpetual dissolutions. The enemy has damaged everything in the sanctuary. Your enemies roam in the midst of your meeting place. They set up their banners for signs. They seem like men who lift up axes among the thick trees, and now they break down its carved work all at once with axes and hammers. They have set fire to your sanctuary. They have defiled the dwelling place of your name to the ground. They said in their hearts, let us destroy them altogether. They have burned up all the meeting places of God in the land. We do not see our signs. There is no longer a prophet, nor is there any among us who know how long. O God, how long will the adversary reproach? Will the enemy blaspheme your name forever? Why do you withdraw your hand, even in your right hand? Take it out of your bosom and destroy them. For God is my king from an old, working salvation in the midst of the earth. You divided the sea by your strength. You broke the heads of the sea serpents in the waters. You broke the heads of the leviathans in pieces and gave them as food to the people inhabiting the wilderness. You broke open the fountains and the flood. You dried up the mighty rivers. The day is yours, the night is also yours. You have prepared the light and the sun. You have set up all the borders of the earth. You have made summer and winter. Remember that the enemy has reproached, O Lord, and that a foolish people has blasphemed your name. Oh, do not deliver the life of your turtle dove or the wild beast. Do not forget the life of your poor forever. Have respect to the covenant. For the dark places of the earth are full of the haunts of cruelty. Oh, do not let the oppressed return ashamed. Let the poor and needy praise your name. Arise, O God, plead your own cause. Remember how the foolish man reproaches you daily. Do not forget the voice of your enemies. The tumult of those who rise up against you increases continually.
Okay. So as you read this, study the psalm to prepare for class tonight, how would you summarize what this psalm's about? What is your summary of overview of the theme of this psalm? Frank?
Well, the enemies have defiled the temple and did great damage to all of the meeting places that God's people went to, and they set fire to the temple.
Okay. So someone, it doesn't say who, someone had defiled the temple and destroyed it, brought great destruction upon the place of worship, the temple. And of course, the psalm is about why would God allow this and what you're going to do about it. Okay? So as we look at the questions then, question number 1, verse 1 and 2, he starts off giving reasons why God should remember his people. So what are some reasons he gives why God should remember his people? Verses 1 and 2. God should remember his people. Why? Karen?
He has purchased the congregation from of old, and he has redeemed the inheritance of the people.
Okay. All right, he's purchased them and redeemed them. Okay. Got the comments on that, or other things it says in those first couple of verses? Frank?
Question. At this point, who is he talking about having redeemed them from?
Okay. Comments on from whom God redeemed the people? What would the redemption be? What's he referring to there? Thoughts on that? What does it mean to redeem? Terry?
Well, it means to buy back, but also the idea with him saying of old, the first time he bought them back was from Egypt.
Okay. That's what I thought too. That he's talking about when he brought them out of Egypt to make them his people. That he was redeeming them from their slavery. Just like in a parallel, he redeems us from sin through the blood of his son. He purchased the people and made them his, redeeming them from Egypt. Okay. Other comments on those first 2 verses about his description of why that God should remember the people? They're his, he redeemed them, he purchased them. What else does it say? At least a couple other things. Well, notice in verse 1, he calls them the sheep of his pasture. So the idea of him being the shepherd over his sheep. So he should care for his sheep. Why are you angry? Why have you cast us off when you're our shepherd, we're your sheep? And the last part of verse 2, Mount Zion, where you dwell, refers to what? Mount Zion, where he dwelled, was what? Frank?
The temple.
The temple again, which was the dwelling place of God, not in the sense that God physically dwells in a place, but that's where he had appointed for the people to come to meet, to worship him. And so in that symbolic sense, his presence was in over the mercy seat in the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, so what they're saying is, here's all these reasons that you should care for your people. Now, why did you allow, what he's going to describe, why did you allow this to happen if you're his people? Okay, other comments on the first 2 verses? Okay, so the next question then, verses 3 and 4, what's the tragedy that concerns the people? We're your people, but this happened. So and we've already discussed it to some extent. What is the problem that they're asking why this happened? Verses 3 and 4. Terry?
The enemies had come in and destroyed the sanctuary. They'd set up idols or signs and roared in the midst of your meeting places. All the evil they had done against the places where they worshiped God.
Okay, So they had seriously damaged the place of worship, and the temple, defiled it, burned it, broke it down. Okay? Now, he doesn't say when this happened. The only time I can think of would be with Nebuchadnezzar, the destruction of the temple by the Babylonians. It would certainly fit. That's the only thing I can think of. Other comments on the problem that concerns them? Notice verse 5. Let's see, 5 through 8. Excuse me, yes. Question number 3. What in particular have they done? Verses 5 through 8. What else have they done? We've seen out that they damaged everything in the sanctuary, but specifically 5 through 8, what did he say they did? Karen?
They'd taken axes and broken down the carved wood, set fire to the sanctuary, and defiled the sanctuary.
Okay. So they took axes, actually, breaking down the carved work, axes and hammers, set fire to the sanctuary, defiled the dwelling place. Okay. What was their thinking, verse 8? What was their thought as they did this? Neil?
That they would be able to destroy them altogether, and it says that they had burned up all their meeting places of God in the land, so this wasn't one place, it was, as Frank said earlier, it was all the meeting places.
Okay. So apparently they had other places that they met for worship, not some of the things they were not allowed to do others in the temple, but even other places where they might worship had been destroyed. So whoever this was had just come in to overthrow the worship in general of the worship of God. Okay, other comments through verse 8? Okay. So then verses 9 through 11, question 4. What did the people ask of God about this then? What are the people saying to God about this? 9 through 11. What is their request? 9 through 11. Steve?
They were longing for divine guidance.
Okay. Other comments?
Questioning the duration of suffering.
Okay, all right. So the question, how long is it going to last? Why, it's bad enough that it happened. How long is it going to last? Okay. Other comments on 9 through 11? Susie?
They comment that there's no prophet in the land to tell them God's will, which is due to their own turning away from God.
So this destruction had happened. They don't know how long it's going to be, and there's no one to tell them. There's no prophet, no one there to explain to them how long this is going to continue. So they say, how long will their adversary reproach? And the enemy will blaspheme your name. Will it happen forever? Why do you withdraw in your hand? Why do you allow this? What's the significance of take your hand out of your bosom in verse 11? What do you think that meant, Terry?
The idea of God restraining his hand from saving from this disaster.
Yeah, just like your hand just kind of resting there. Why is your hand just resting there? Do something. Basically, that's the response of the people. Why aren't you going to do something about this? When are you going to do something? Here's a reproach not just against the people, not just against the nation, but against the worship place of God, and therefore against God himself. Okay, so these people are your enemies, not just the people's enemies. When are you going to do something about it? And that's their question, their concern. Comments? Sharon?
Totally agreeing with Terry. I thought of having his hand in his bosom to be kind of equivalent for us to having your hands in your pockets. Sometimes if there's something you really want to do and you feel like you shouldn't do it, our hands in our pockets, we tense up and we close our eyes and we just don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And that's what I was envisioning.
Okay. All right? Other comments through verse 11? Okay. So then we got in question number 5. It talks about some things God had done in the past, verses 12 through 15, which demonstrate God's power. What are some things he mentions God has done in the past that shows his power, and that people are saying, we know you can do it, so they're reasoning then that he should do that, use his power in this case. So what are some past things that he's done that show his power? Verses 12 to 15. Steve?
Parting of the Red Sea.
Okay. Divided the sea by your strength, verse 13. Okay, what else? Bill?
He broke the heads of the sea serpents in the water, and broke the heads of the leviathans in pieces, and gave them as food to the people inhabiting the wilderness.
Okay. Now that one is an interesting one. That certainly is what it says. Thoughts about when or how God broke the heads of the sea serpents or the heads of Leviathan? First of all, what is a Leviathan? Anyone want to comment on what Leviathan is? Frank?
Recently heard that it was expressed that a Leviathan could have been a dinosaur
Okay, could have been.
before they were extinct.
Okay. So, or the sea serpents, whatever. When would God have done this? You think of examples of it? How would the people know he'd done it? Terry?
Well, it could have been during the flood, that all the animals that died during the flood, with God overwhelming the earth with water.
Okay, I hadn't thought about that. That could be, certainly. Okay. Other comments? Okay. Another thing I thought of was maybe it's symbolic. Satan is compared to a serpent. So perhaps it's referring to the forces of evil of Satan, and that he has overcome them in the past, that he could do it again. That was what I thought, but I don't know, but what Terry thought might be better. Other comments? Neil?
Well, it says there in verse 14, it says, broke the heads of the Leviathan in pieces and gave him as food to the people inhabiting the wilderness. So,
Yes. So he gave food. Yeah, that wouldn't fit so much, would it? Giving them as food in the wilderness. Other comments? Frank?
I wonder if there was knowledge of this event or the story of what God did for them that we just don't have recorded for us today.
Yes, which of course is entirely possible. Other comments? Yes, Darrell.
Yeah, I don't think all of these things are necessarily something that happened together. First line, verse 13, you divided the sea by your strength. I would think that would be a reference to the crossing of the Red Sea headed toward Mount Sinai. But I wouldn't think all of these other things are necessarily that same occasion. I think verse 15, that first line, does sound like the flood. And verse 16, the second line, you prepared the light and the sun. That might even be a reference back to creation. So I think maybe these are various things that all have shown in the past the power of God.
Yeah, I think that's what it means too. I'm just not sure when he cut off the head of Leviathan, that's all. Okay, other comments? Velma?
Seem way out someplace, but I was wondering if these are not, when it speaks of the Leviathan and him taking care of them, and I thought perhaps that was a time when he destroyed everything, and then he destroyed their enemies, and then helped them and brought them back. But if these are literal, then it's difficult to know where. Perhaps they were not actually literal, but they're enemies, and he had overcome them, and then he fed them and took care of them.
Well, that's kind of what I thought about too, is it wasn't necessarily literal. However, one of the points that God makes to Job, in the book of Job, is that people can't destroy Leviathan, but God could. So that's literally true. Whether or not God has done it at this particular time, I'm not aware of that. Okay, any other comments through verse 15? Okay, Daryl commented on 15 itself. He broke open the fountain and the flood and dried up mighty rivers. Comments on the significance of broke open the fountain and dried up the mighty rivers. Comments on that? Anybody? Terry?
We know he provided water for his people in their escape from Egypt, and that he dried up the land for Elijah, and for when he had cursed, when he had asked that God not let it rain for 3 years, and God didn't let it rain.
Okay. So God has proven that he can do both. He can give water when it's needed. He can restrain the water when it's needed, when it fits his purpose. Both.
I thought most of it is showing God's control of this world, and that even though it looks bad in our eyes what's going on, God has a plan, and he uses what he wants to of his creation to bring about his desired effect.
Yes, okay. And again, as Daryl mentioned in verse 16, night and day are both from God, going back to creation. The day is yours. You prepared the light and the sun. The night is yours, the day is yours, the night is yours, light and sun. Back again to the creation. God has proved his power. So it seems to me what the people are saying is, you've demonstrated your power in the past. We have a situation now where we wish you'd do it again. You have the power to stop these people who are destroying your temple. And the request is that he would use that power for their protection. Okay, that seems to me to be the point, whether or not we understand all the specifics. Other comments? Terry?
Back to verse 8, what the enemy said to themselves is, we will utterly subdue them. After they'd done all the harm to them in the places that they worship, the enemy thought, okay, we've got the better of them and their God. But the people of Israel know better. They know what God can do. But the enemy is foolishly expressing that they were more powerful.
And that's another point that I mentioned maybe a week or two ago, that it's interesting to me how often when an enemy attacks Israel, God views it as an attack upon him, because they're his people. He's their shepherd. He's protecting them. And it's a reproach upon him when they reproach his people. Okay? As we've already got into question 6, verses 16 and 17. How about 17? What does he say in verse 17 that demonstrates the power of God? Verse 17. Bill?
Set the borders of the earth and made summer and winter.
Okay. Summer and winter. Obviously, just going back to the day and night in verse 16, that the sun and the moon and day and night and so on, from the creation he separated the daylight from the darkness, day and night. He also made the seasons. Okay, so we have the seasons of God's creation. I'm not quite so sure about the borders of the earth. Comments on the borders of the earth? Verse 17? Anybody want to comment on that? Frank?
I thought that probably what he was talking about was the separating of the sea from the land.
That's one thought I had too. At the creation, he separated the sea from the land. Velma?
Well, also, the whole setting of our atmosphere that holds the earth. he set all those borders, and they're all out there, and they all stay in place.
Okay? All right, so all of it is set up because of God's power. And then in verse 18, he says, then remember now, see, here's all your power. We know what you can do. Remember now what the people have done, and the point is, we're asking you to use your power now. Okay, other comments through 17. Question number 6. Okay? So question number 7, verses 18 through 20. So what is his, what reasons do they give now that they hope that God will act? They described his power. They're convinced he has the power. Why do they think he should act? Verses 18 through 20. Karen?
They've reproached God and blasphemed his name.
They reproached and blasphemed the name of God. Okay? Other comments on why they think he should act? 18 through 20. Susie?
Because what they're doing, while they're ultimately reproaching God and blaspheming his name, they're taking it out on God's turtle dove or his beloved.
Okay.
You've chosen us as your beloved, and this is what is happening to us. Don't forget that.
Okay. All right. Other comments? Terry?
Well, they also mentioned the covenant that he has made. And then his covenant that says he's going to punish the evil.
Okay. So he has a covenant. They're reminding him of the covenant. Okay. Other comments? 18 to 20? All right, Terry mentioned the reference to the turtle dove in verse 19. And I asked the question about that, I think. What is the significance of the turtle dove? Thoughts on the turtle dove? What is the turtle dove like? Peaceful? Harmless. That's exactly the words I was thinking of. Peaceful, harmless. Okay. So who is the turtle dove then? The turtle dove is
The Israelites.
Israelites. We're defenseless. Okay, comments? I think they're admitting that they can't handle the situation. They are unable to solve the problem, but they know God can. He said, so don't deliver the life of your turtle dove to the wild beast. Don't allow these cruel enemies to harm your people, the life of your poor, those who you have a covenant with. Don't allow them to be destroyed by these wild beasts. Okay, and that's what it seemed like to me to be saying. Other comments? Okay. And again, then, the dark places of the earth, the last part of 20, full of the habitation of cruelty. Lots of wickedness, lots of bad things out there. They're trusting God for their protection in the face of the difficulties. Okay? Anything else to 20? We finished the psalm then, question number 8, 21 to 23. What do they hope for? What are they wanting? What are they hoping for as they've described the problem that they're facing and the power of God, that they know God can handle it? What are they hoping for as it finishes then? Susie?
They're hoping not to be, they're referring to themselves as the oppressed, and they're hoping that God will not allow them to be ashamed or disappointed, and to not allow, also they refer to themselves as the poor and needy, so that they can praise the name of God.
Okay. All right, so don't want to allow them to be ashamed because of the destruction of their temple and so on. Let them praise God. Okay? Other comments to the last few verses? What they're looking for? Anything else? Okay? Again, verse 22, the foolish man reproaches God daily. Plead your own cause. In other words, they're calling upon God to deal with the problem. And remember, these people are reproaching God, not just the people, but they're reproaching God. The voice of their enemies are a tumult of those who rise up against you. It increases continually. Okay? Other comments? All right, so we have an appeal from the people to God, not just for their defense, but that he would defend his own cause, because it was his temple, that was being destroyed, his people that were being harmed. Anything else on Psalm 74? Okay. We'll move on then to Psalm 75. And who'd like to read Psalm 75 for us, please? Psalm 75. Neil, please.
We give thanks to you, O God, we give thanks, for your wondrous works declare that your name is near. When I choose the proper time, I will judge uprightly. The earth and all its inhabitants are dissolved. I set up its pillars firmly. I said to the boastful, do not deal boastfully, and to the wicked, do not lift up your horn. Do not lift up your horn on high. Do not speak with a stiff neck. For exaltation comes neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south. But God is a judge. He puts down one and exalts another. For in the hand of the Lord there is a cup, and the wine is red. It is fully mixed, and he pours it out. Surely it dregs shall all the wicked of the earth drain and drink down. But I will declare forever, I will sing praises to the God of Jacob. And all the horns of the wicked I will also cut off, but the horns of the righteous shall be exalted.
Okay. So what did you conclude as you studied is the theme of this psalm? What is this psalm about? How would you summarize the theme of the psalm? Frank?
There's thanksgiving in here for God's righteous judgment.
Okay. God is the judge, and God will judge righteously, but we'll see he does it in his own time. When he chooses, he will exalt those who are right, he will punish those who are wicked, but he'll do it in his own time. Okay? So they start off in the verses, the first 3 verses, question number 9. What promise does God make in verses 1 through 3? What's his promise in verses 1 through 3? Or maybe Frank?
When I choose the proper time, I will judge uprightly.
Okay. That's what I thought was the emphasis there too. When I choose the time, I will judge uprightly when I choose the time. Okay? So they begin, they say what they're thanking him for his wondrous works and declare that your name is near. But God's response is, I'm going to choose the proper time to judge. And what will happen, what is he, verse 3? Well, what does he say is the problem in verse 3? Bill?
It says all the inhabitants of the earth will be dissolved.
Okay. All right. And I set up its pillars firmly. Okay, and that one was a little bit difficult for me. What did you think about verse 3? Comments? Terry?
It seems like he's saying the earth can be in an uproar, and all of its inhabitants can be tottering or in not a place of safety or security. But it is I who keep steady the pillars that hold the earth together.
Which means what then?
That he's in charge. I will control what happens upon the earth. I'll punish when it's time to punish, even though it seems like I've not acted when you thought I should. I know the right time. I'll act when it's the right time, and I will put things back in balance.
Okay. All right. Other comments? Okay. So when we look at situations in the world, even as we live today, does it not seem like there are times when the whole thing is just going to totter and fall? It just can't keep going. It's going to be dissolved. It's going to be destroyed. But God says, I set up the pillars firmly. This world stands because God determines it's going to stand. And it will stand just as long as he determines for it to stand. It will end when he decides for it to end. It's up to him. What it looks like to us is not necessarily the way God sees things. And so, terrible as things may be at times, God's in charge. And he will not allow this world to end or whatever situation is we're facing. He will not allow destruction to come unless he decides to. It's up to him. He'll do it in his time, in his way. Okay? And we've seen that in a number of Psalms before. He said the same thing to Job. But to me, that's such an important thing to consider. And it seems like that's the very theme of the Psalm at the very beginning. Other comments on those first three verses? Anybody? Frank?
In Psalm 37, verse 7, David wrote, "Rest in the Lord and wait. Wait patiently for him. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who brings wicked schemes to pass." Okay.
And again, we talked about that in Psalm 37. We talked about it in Psalm 73. The wicked people seem like they got the upper hand. Things are going their way. It seems like the whole thing, everything's falling apart. But God says, I'm in charge here. And I will judge when the time comes. Okay? Other comments on the first three verses? Terry?
We hear a lot today about the fact that the oceans are going to overrun the earth, or we're going to kill ourselves because of the things that are happening that man is responsible for here. But God is saying here, no, it's not going to be you. It's not going to be things that you think are going to create this. It'll be me.
I thought that too. A lot of you are as old as I am to remember when we were teenagers or young people are going to destroy the world with the hydrogen bombs. Hydrogen bombs can do a lot of damage. They can't destroy the world. God's in charge. Things are going to go the way God wants them to go. And he's in control. Okay? The time will come, it'll be his time, not man's time. Okay? So now he speaks to the evil people in verse 4. To the boastful, he's talking to the boastful and how they speak. Question number 10. What warning does he give them? 4 through 6. What warning does he give to those who are boastful, those who think they're in charge? What warning does he give? Karen?
Don't deal boastfully.
Okay, so first of all, don't deal boastfully. The wicked, he says, do not lift up the horn. What does that mean? Don't lift up the horn means what? The horns are what, especially and symbolically in prophecy? A horn refers to, Susie? Authority or power. Okay. So those who are boastful, they think they're in charge. Don't be boastful. Don't lift up the horn. Don't think you've got the power. Don't you think you're in charge here? Don't lift up the horn on high. Verse 5. Do not speak with a stiff neck. A stiff neck is what? What does a stiff neck refer to? Karen?
Pride, insolence.
Pride, insolence, and stubbornness. Okay, stiff neck, it's going to be my way. Okay, don't look at it that way. Okay, comments through 5. How about 6? Let's see, are we still, yeah. How about the various directions mentioned in verse 6? Exaltation comes neither from the east, nor the west, nor from the south. What's the significance of that? Verse 6. Comments? Susie?
When I think of saying the east, the west, and the south, they're talking about governments, other nations. So your help isn't going to be coming from other nations, or your judgment. That your judgment's coming from me.
Oh, all right. So, don't lift up your horn. Don't speak with a stiff neck. Don't think that power is somewhere around you. Other nations, that's not where the power is. The power is not there. That's not where the exaltation is going to come from. So what is going to be in charge? What is going to determine who's blessed and who's going to suffer? What does determine it? Verse 7. Karen?
God is the judge.
God is the judge. He puts down one and exalts another. So it's not your own power. It's not your other nations. It's not your army. It's not your physical attraction or your personality. That's not it. It's God's the judge. And of course, ultimately, the point is we have to be faithful to Him. So verse 8, how does He describe what God's judgment in verse 8? Where are we now? Question number, we're on the last question, question number 11. How does He describe the punishment in verse 8? Terry?
He describes it as if it's a drink, something that he's going to mix and pour out, and all the wicked of the earth will drink this. They'll drain it down to the dregs.
God has used that illustration a number of times. A glass of wine makes a man drunk. God uses that to illustrate His punishment on wicked people. He's going to drink it to the dregs means what? Now, drink it down to the dregs means what? The dregs are what? Yeah, the very bottom of it. You're not just going to take a sip or two. You're going to get the whole thing. All of God's punishment is you're going to have the wine is red, it's mixed, it's pours it out, and its dregs shall be to all the wicked. Drain and drink it down. And I will declare forever. I will sing praises. Now here's the people's praise to God then. I will declare forever, I will sing praises to the God of Jacob. All the horns of the wicked I will cut off. The horns of the righteous shall be exalted. Why? Because God is the judge. God is the one who will judge justly in His time. When His time comes, not our time, His time. Okay? Other comments on Psalm 75? Anything else? Susie?
It makes me think of, and I can't find it, can't think of how it fully goes, but God said that He would destroy, was it the Amorites? That their wickedness was not yet full. That's what it made me think of.
Right, yeah, and I think it's Genesis 15 is probably what you're thinking of. Where in the promise to Abraham, God said that the people of Israel would take the land of Canaan when the wickedness of the Amorites was full. When they were bad, when it was bad enough, then God would act. Okay? We have to understand that God's still in charge in our day too. And it's not up to us. It's easy for us to think, we think God should do this. But God decides for Himself. Other comments? Terry, and then we'll close.
Psalms 11:6 says, speaking of God, says, let Him rain coals on the wicked, fire and sulfur and a scorching wind shall be the portion of their cup.
Okay. Thank you very much. And next time then we go into the next two Psalms. And thank you.